All right. Let's talk about the World Championships in Barcelona. This is my personal review of the World Championships, so how it went for me, my tournament report, if you will. If you are interested in the kind of more objective event review, that is also live on my channel, and that kind of takes a step back and looks at the whole tournament as a whole rather than my own personal feelings about it each day and what I got up to and all that kind of stuff, right? So if you want the objective review where I look at how well it was run as a whole, that's one thing, and that's a pretty good, interesting sort of breakdown where I try and distance myself from my own experiences. If you want to talk about how I did and get that kind of on-the-ground view for someone who wasn't there, this is the video for you. So let's just start off. Barcelona, fantastic venue, right? I've been to the Fira multiple times for work, and I know I've been to conferences there and things. It's a great venue, surrounded by hotels, surrounded by good food. There was about, I would say, 20 different restaurants within 5 minutes walk of the hotel that I would consider, 4 stars out of 5 or above. Different cuisines, Japanese, Spanish, tapas, steak, Indian, everything. We were in a really good part of a city, not overpriced either. Both the hotel we got and the food was all reasonable. I had a 3-course Japanese lunch for €10. That's, dumplings, that's some yakitori and a sushi plate for €10. It was fantastic. Eating out every night, we found tons of options, so many that it actually took us a while to figure out where we were going to go. So Barcelona, 10 out of 10 in terms of location. The venue they chose, 10 out of 10, plenty of space. Even had really kind of plenty of bathrooms, enough for enough people when you realize there's actually 2-3 bathrooms in the place that you could go to. And of course it wasn't a tent. That's 10 out of 10. And also just the amount of space that was available, nothing felt crunched in, keeping in mind that there were about 1,500 people coming and going from this event. We even had a 900-person side event on one of the days. So the venue was fantastic. I got there on Thursday, didn't go to the player briefing because I thought I didn't want to spend €60 on it. Went out for tapas instead. Had great tapas. Too much drink. But that was fine. Ran into Friday a little bit hungover, which is all right for the first day of a tournament when you're not really doing anything. But Friday was really where the problems started. So we signed up for the team sealed. £270 for the entire team, €70 each. Sorry, if I say pounds and euro, just they're interchangeable. We paid euro for everything. And with that, we got the Sagrada Familia promo, which is gorgeous. Love it. I actually got 3 over the weekend. And the idea, we were going to play team sealed with bright lights, mix and match what cards we got, build these perfect decks. Friday was an absolute shit show. We got there at 11. We got there at 8:30 to just sell some cards and talk to some people, and then we thought by 11 the tournament would start. There were still people queuing to sign up for the tournament at 11. It wasn't even in our gems. By 11:30 we thought, hey, it's in our gems now, maybe the tournament will start. We did not get our cards to build our sealed decks until 1:30. We did not play our first round of a tournament until 2 o'clock. Then it took 50 minutes or maybe even an hour for us to play the second round of the sealed tournament. The tournament itself supposed to start at 11 and finish probably at 2 or 3. Actually finished at 4:45. It was running so late they had to delay the start of other side events so that the people wouldn't or want to refund their tickets, and so they would actually happen. And not only our event, the Team Sealed event, but also 5 other side events that happened that day all had their final rounds cancelled and free wins given to everyone in the tournament to make up for the fact that they were running so late. Friday was an unmitigated disaster, right? I was frustrated, everyone was frustrated, and generally I was just not having a good time. I showed up to play Flesh and Blood on Friday. I was in the venue from 8 o'clock, and I played my first game of Fab at 2 p.m, despite starting up for a tournament that started at 11. That was not good, right? I mean, I was just so frustrated at that point, and I was just so glad to be playing Fab by the time it came around. I didn't really care if I won or lost. So I kind of salvaged Friday by playing in the team sealed until we finished, and then playing in another sealed event. So by the end of the day, I did feel like I'd played Fab, even though I'd played 6 games of sealed Fab in an entire day, as versus the 3 side events I was planning on doing. I was planning on trying to sneak in some commoner. I was planning on doing more sealed, so I was planning on 2 sealed tournaments and a commoner, and I did get both those sealed tournaments done, but they both had a round cut out of them, so it was generally really frustrating. And I kind of left Friday being like, if tomorrow is like this, I'm not going to stay around. I kind of said if they can't get the calling running on time, I'm actually just going to cancel the event and go sightseeing. Barcelona is full of loads of wonderful things. So I left the day, as a consumer, someone who showed up to the event, who paid €210 to, well, I didn't pay it all myself, obviously, but my team paid €210 to participate. I was not pleased. And I was kind of setting the scene that if that was the tone of the entire weekend, I wasn't here for it, right? I just wasn't. I can have fun with my friends, I can sightsee, I can enjoy Barcelona, rather than just sitting in a hall not playing Fab. Thankfully, that didn't turn out to be the case. So on Saturday morning when I rocked up to the calling, it started, I think, on time, maybe 10-15 minutes late. The rounds ran smoothly. We got our packs smoothly. The whole process of registering pools and things like that to make sure people didn't cheat. Everything was run really, really well. For those of you who don't know, you can't just show up to a calling, get your packs, and build a deck. You sit down across someone who is not going to be your opponent in round one. They watch you opening the packs to kind of see a feel of what you got. They obviously spot if there are any hits and they remember those. You then watch them opening their packs just to verify what they're opening. And then you exchange pools and you register the cards that you watched your opponent open for them, and they register yours for you. So the whole point is, they watch you opening their packs. They're obviously going to see if you open specifically amazing good cards. They're going to take a note of roughly what you opened, and then they're going to register that pool for you. So obviously if there's a bomb that they didn't see when you were opening the pack suddenly in your pool, that person is going to call a judge and say, hey, look, I watched him opening his packs, that Majestic was not there, and you're obviously going to get in hot water. So that's a really clean system just of making sure no one could cheat, because at other sealed events I've been to, I have seen people cheating. So that obviously can't happen when you're running a sealed calling. People have to have the packs when they're open. So this was all really good. The rounds ran really smoothly, and I'm genuinely having an all right time. I win 2 rounds, lose the 3rd round, and I'm like, do I want to keep playing? You may not know this, but I actually have a weirdly high limited ELO, just because I have been doing reasonably well in limited at Nationals and ProQuest and stuff. I'm in the top 200 worldwide, and I'm kind of thinking if I win more games than I lose, my ELO will go up, and if it does go up enough through this and other ProQuest seasons, I could potentially creep my way into the top 50 and maybe start qualifying for tournaments based on my ELO. So I was kind of thinking, well, I'm 2-1, do I just drop and take some ELO wins and go home? I decided to keep playing. And then I end up beating some really great players, and I end up 6-2 at the end of the day. So I make day 2 of the calling, which was actually fantastic given how much I've played and how much time I've had for Fab recently. Making day 2 of the calling really surprised me. So I kind of went, had food, had a bit of a quiet night, rocked up for the draft in the morning. And this is where things start to go, unfortunately, a bit off the walls. I hadn't had time to practice Bright Lights draft as much as I would like. And I get clear signals in the first draft that theoretically Tekla is open for me. I get past Evos from my right in 2 packs. And not even bad Evos, like the yellow gloves that block 3, I get past those. I get past Mechanical Strength. So I'm getting past good cards for Tekla. And that makes me think this hero's open. The person to my right is playing Max or Dash. I can draft Tekla. And then something weird happens. So I get my Evos. That's all right. But the red attacks just don't seem to be anywhere. And I'm not saying I didn't open any red attacks, right? And then immediately the packs I'm getting don't have any red attacks in, which means that everyone to my right is picking red attacks, which is correct. You should pick the red 6-power attacks in Bright Lights draft. But it means that they're also not opening enough that any are making their way towards me. So normally the person to my right would open at least 2 6-power attacks and I would get one of them. But actually he's just opened and passed me a pack which has 7 yellows and 3 blues. So I'm kind of just getting absolutely shafted for red attacks. So I'm kind of just sitting in this position where I'm drafting blues and yellows just to fill up my deck. Then I realize on pack 2 that the person to my left isn't drafting Tekla at all, just based on what they're passing me. And I was right, so they actually drafted Dash. So that's really good. I'm feeling really confident about the draft, but I'm still not getting any red attacks, and I'm not opening them either. I get my 4 Evos. I don't really get any more red attacks. So I actually end up with only 2 red attacks, a load of yellows and blues, but not really anything to do except try and fatigue people. And the problem is that works somewhat in sealed. It doesn't work in draft. Like, good max and dash players will smash through you. So I go into a round one against a dash player. He absolutely defeats me. I go into a second round against another Teklo, but he's got all the red cards, which didn't make their way around my side of the table, but he clearly opened a lot of them. So his deck is just so much more powerful than mine. He smashes me. And then I go into a third game against another Teklo player, and I managed to eke out just a very, very close win. I was on 1 life, he was on 1 life, but I got my Evos before he did, so I managed to chip through, even though his deck was better. So I end the first draft 1-2. I'm now 7-4. Any hopes I have of sort of making the top 8 are gone, but I still have a chance of making some money, so I stick around for the second draft. And at this point as well, also being 7-4, my ELO is probably still going up, so I'm feeling quite good. I draft what I consider to be a really good dash deck. So I have 3 red boom grenades, I have a red backup protocol, I have 2 reverse polarities, I have a red mini force field, and I have... There was one other card I had, a security script blue. So I consider I have 8 items. Those 8 items are really good. I'm a bit light on blues. I only have 11, and 2 of those are blue items that I've added in. So I go up to 9 items. But I have a decent chunk of red attacks. I have ratchet ups and soup ups. I have 2 of each. And I have, about 12 or 13 boost cards. If I wanted to change that pool to make it better, I would have 2 more blues, and I would have more boost red attacks, but there weren't the boost red attacks going around. I drafted them when I could, but that was what it was. I didn't even take items. I took attacks. The items just came to me later on in the picks, right? The only items I slammed were the reversal scripts, which are fantastic, and the boom grenades. Everything else just kind of filtered through to me because no one to my right was drafting dash. I thought I had on paper a 3-0 dash deck, right? I thought I was doing very well. It wasn't, spoilers, but there were reasons for that. So the first game, I went up against one of the maxes in the pool. Now, I was pretty sure, based on what I'm seeing going around, that 3 or 4 people to my right were all drafting Tekla Vossen, and I was on dash. So the odds that I would get paired up against the max in the pool, there were 2 of them. One of those maxes was quite low, but I did. And as expected, when 5 people, we were in a 9-man pod, go Teklo, and there's 2 dash and 2 max, the decks are stacked. So his max deck was stacked, but I hit him with a double boom grenade on turn 2 that he didn't block properly. I had 1 boom grenade in play, I had 1 on the top of my deck. He thought he was taking, 6 damage. I made him take 10. I put him to 5. So I was in a really good situation to bring this guy down. Sorry, that's just the dog in the background. Yes, he is cute and adorable and very well behaved. He's a collie. He's gorgeous. I thought I was in a really good situation. He was on 5 life. I was on 16. And then disaster happens. So at this point, I have 9 items in my deck. 1 is just bulking up the blue numbers. 8 are really good items. I drew 2 in the first hand. I drew 3 in the second hand. And I drew 3 in my third hand. At this point, the only items left in my deck, and I checked after the round, are the 2 that I pitched on turns 1 and 2 to pay for stuff. So on turn 3, where he took 14 damage, was it 14 damage? 11 damage from 2 boom grenades and 3 damage from an attack, he had a full hand, and I had 3 items in my hand. As you might imagine, I went to 4 life, and the problem started then, because the turn after that is the turn where I drew another 3 items. So I'm sitting there in a situation where I've got the items I pitched on turn 1 in my deck. I've drawn either 2 or 3 items, and then I drew the remaining items in my deck. I have been thoroughly shafted. I cannot block a single attack. Well, I can block 1 attack that he sends, but ultimately I take tons of damage, and I die that turn, or I think it was the turn after, when I just couldn't keep any tempo because all I had was these items. Disaster. Absolute disaster. Then, a little tilted from that game, I go into a game against Teklo where actually things are a lot better. I'm lining up attacks, I hit him with an overpowered boom grenade, I'm setting up some other stuff, but ultimately I kind of just miss the tempo value a little bit because I managed to score a boom grenade, I get him quite low, and I kind of give him a few too many attacks on turns where he doesn't, need to block them. and I can't really set up a second overpower because I kind of used it a bit too early. So it's entirely skill play, but I lose the second game. So at this point, I've got 1-4 in the drafts, and I'm just kind of done. I've gone from being 6-2 to being 7-5, and I just kind of call it a day there, right? I'm not, or 7-6 even. I'm not getting any more points. I'm not getting anywhere near money in this tournament, and I'm just losing games and not really having much fun. So I drop. I kind of wish I dropped earlier, but I don't regret drafting that second draft because I think if my pool had been slightly different, I would have had a 3-0 deck. But I really hadn't practiced enough. So that's kind of how we ended. I went after that, the second day of the calling, and I just played a Sagrada Familia sealed event. It was the largest Fab event potentially ever, with 907 people signed up. And it was just really good. It was really good to finish the day playing Fab. Then we went for Japanese food, got up the next morning, came home. So did I have a good weekend? Friday was rough. Friday was really rough. Just not enjoyable, really. I mean, we played some Fab, but the stress of not having the tournament and everything just made it untenable. So it was all right. Saturday was a lot of fun. Relived the adrenaline of making it into the calling, but ultimately, I think it was a bit of a problem doing so well on day 2 of the calling. Now, I don't really think I'm going off on some oh, how terrible for him, he made day 2 of the calling, but I'm just trying to put this in context of, we said the problem before, we were talking about Birmingham, was how trying to be competitive meant I had less fun at these tournaments. And here we are in a situation where I'm entering the calling really with no notion that I would make day 2. And because I don't have that notion, I'm not really practicing finding the time to draft. And then because I haven't done that practice, we get into a situation where I'm feeling competitive, I'm feeling like I've done really well, and I have to make day 2, but I'm not actually prepared or set myself up in a way that's going to give me a good chance to win on day 2. And what that leads to then is the frustration of going from having a reasonably good score on day 1 to a terrible score on day 2, and in the situation where I leave that tournament, the calling, feeling kind of grumpy, a bit annoyed, not really saying I had a great day. Right, now I managed to salvage it by going away and having lunch and, coming back to the tournament, playing in some sealed, having a bit of fun. But it became then to dominate my entire weekend in a way that I kind of said I didn't want these events to, because I'm not prepared to be competitive in them. So you see what I'm kind of saying here, that if I hadn't made day 2, I would have played in 3 or 4 different formats on Sunday and probably played in a few more on Saturday evening, rather than being completely focused on the calling. If I hadn't made day 2, I think I probably would have had more fun because I wasn't prepared for day 2, and I got stressed and frustrated by my performance in the tournament, when really it would have been better to probably just be not taking things as seriously and playing in side events. So that's kind of a learning, I think, for me from the whole tournament, that actually maybe it was better if I hadn't made the second day in a format I wasn't prepared for, and actually it might be a lesson that in the future, if that happens, I might just say, no, I'm going to drop and I'm just going to have a day doing fun. Because there's a list of stuff that I wish I had been able to find time to do at the World Championships. Meet James White again, say hello. I mean, we waved at each other from across the room. Didn't really get a chance to chat that much. Meet the professor, who I think is fantastic. Didn't have time to do that. Get some stuff signed by some artists, like the Sagrada promos and things like that. Didn't have time. There's all these things that I didn't have time to do because I was playing in the calling. Playing and losing. Now, obviously, if I had done amazingly well with very little preparation, this would be a completely different story, but I think the better EV for me for these sorts of events is to look at myself honestly and say, hey, have I had the preparation I need to perform in this? And if I'm not, maybe just to think about walking away. I think that's what it comes down to. So from my personal opinion, was it a great weekend? Yes, it was fantastic. I was eating dinner, I was eating food with my friends, I was having a great time, we were drinking, we played some board games, we played Love Letter Batman, we played Werewolf in the lobby of our hotel. We did loads of fun stuff together. We had great chats, and there was just really great things. And of course, I played a ton of Flesh and Blood, a game that I love. Sealed Bright Lights was all right. Draft Bright Lights did not go well, but I had a really good time, and I, was super glad that I went there. But there is that interesting discussion about whether I would have had more fun just playing day one of the calling and then going to do side events rather than playing the draft that I wasn't prepared for or not. And I think that's a learning for me, and I think it's an interesting discussion to have, but that's kind of my personal takeaway from the weekend and kind of my tournament report and things that I think went on. The people I played against were great. I had some really good laughs with some random opponents and people, just hearing about where they're from, meeting people from New Zealand, Australia, and obviously all over Europe and America as well, and just playing Flesh and Blood and having a great time. And it was a great weekend. Even with all the logistical stuff that happened on Friday, that was just one day. The whole tournament was fantastic. Talk to you all soon.